Hey guys, Othium here. I just wanted to give my point two credits on this whole Star Citizen high-end HOTAS. It looks like if everything comes together, this is going to be the peripheral to play Citizen with. But I just wanted to throw in my opinion based on what I'm using right now, which is the X55 HOTAS. It's not a bad setup. I really don't have a problem with it using Star Citizen, and I guess I just got lucky because I haven't had any any problems with it whatsoever. One of the questions was whether or not we wanted just the two-way toggle switches or the three-way toggle switches, which, they go forward, return to center, or go back, return to center. Initially, I didn't like these style of toggle switches, but I don't have a problem with them now because I realize how I can use them. I can use them in more than one way, and just flicking something on or flicking something off. For example, I can actually flip through my heads-up display using these particular toggle switches. Like if I flip back on toggle 3, I can switch to my weapons. If I flip back on toggle 2, I can switch to my power. And I can do this all while using the throttle. So if I throttle forward, obviously my ship's going to start moving forward. But as I'm playing with my thumb, I can flip back and select overview, weapons, power, or shield. And on top of that, if I go over to power, by flipping forward and holding it, I can adjust my power on the fly. So if I flip forward and hold on toggle 3, I'll adjust my power grid to G2. Or if I flip forward and hold on toggle 2, I can adjust my power grid to G3. And I can do all of this while I'm obviously flying around and dogfighting and getting into general shenanigans, and it's really handy. Something else I wanted to mention are these buttons that are here on the front of this throttle. The placement isn't perfect. I wish they were about 1 to 2 centimeters in that direction, because when I put my hand on the throttle, my fingers end up being exactly right in the center of where these buttons would be. So if I want to use them effectively, I do have to adjust the placement of my hands. This little guy right here is kind of like a little rocker switch, down or up. It's basically two buttons in one. So up is one button, down is another button. I use this to toggle the IFCF safeties going up or going down. I use that to switch between the different flight modes. If I'm accelerating, pushing down would engage Super Cruise. If I'm decelerating, pushing down would engage precision mode for landing. These buttons here, I actually do use these quite often. If there's a target of opportunity that flies in front of my ship, I hit this button here to quickly target whatever is directly in front of my ship or directly underneath my targeting reticule. And then I use this button here to acquire missile lock. So pushing it several times activates the different missiles and arms them. And then if I actually wanted to fire those missiles, this little red button right here works really nice because I can focus on flying and easily just hitting this and holding it launches out those missiles. The joystick itself isn't bad. The main complaint I have is it seems like it's bigger than it needs to be. I don't have very big hands. My gloves are medium. American glove size, I'm 8. I don't know if there's any other glove size besides that. My palms are okay, but my fingers seem to be a little shorter than most people's. It does present a little bit of a problem using this because as I'm using the hat switches or any of the buttons up here, my hand is literally lifting off of the joystick in order to utilize those. Maybe if those were a little bit lower or placed differently, so I'm not reaching over one gigantic hat to reach a small hat, I would probably switch these around. I like the odd placement of buttons, like this one here is to activate my quantum drive. I like that because there's no chance of me hitting that accidentally. I do like the pinky button down here and the thumb button. That's very nice. I like how easily it twists, but again, if I'm doing something up here, I start to lose my grip on the joystick and twisting it becomes much more difficult. I'm relying on pinching between these two fingers and my palm to twist, and that gets hard under duress. I like this here. This is a very nice addition. I use this to toggle between my chaff or flares, and then my countermeasures is right here with this pinky button. Something else I wish this joystick had was a dual stage trigger. That would definitely up my game. If this was fire group 1 and then push harder with fire group 2 or fire whatever, And then my thumb, I could probably use that for something else, or maybe even use that for a third weapon group, but I rarely use up to 3 weapon groups. This hat right here is perfect. I do use that to adjust my shield strength, and that works just fine. I really like the placement of it, and it seems to be a very nice shape for me to easily change my shield bias. I like how it's got kind of concave, I believe that's concave, or is it convex? I always get confused. Sorry guys, I'm not very verbose in my English. It's just got a good shape. I don't know what they were thinking with this one. This is kind of a slippery hat. This is a better, kind of the same dimpled, inverted shape as this hat here. So this is a nice texture to it, and it's got a nice grip to it. I use this for targeting. This one, I haven't found much use of it just because it's such a weird place and it's out of the way. When I first got my HOTAS, I had a really hard time figuring out how I was going to use the hat switches and buttons to control strafing my ship left, right, up, down, forward, back. I mean, the way the hats work, they're just not conducive for that until I got pedals, and I realized Star Citizen reads the pedals in different ways. Tipping my right foot forward, I can actually strafe up. And likewise, tipping my right foot back, my ship will start to strafe down. If I don't want to strafe anymore, I put the pedal back to a 50% position. And that's just the way the key bindings are set up, and Star Citizen is able to utilize that control put in that method. It's a little bit complicated because the pedals aren't really designed to be used like this, because if I take my foot off the pedal slams back and my ship wants to strafe down. So if I want to keep that 0 point, I have to keep it depressed kind of at the 50% mark so I don't strafe up or down. Tipping my left toe forward makes my ship strafe forward, and tipping my left toe back makes my ship strafe back. I can actually amplify this effect by using the boost, and shoving my shields forward, I can engage kind of what I call tank mode, where if I'm getting chased by some pesky Gladius or M50, I can shove my shields forward and make them chase me rather than me chasing them, and then the odds are in my favor. Strafing is controlled with the twisting axis. Twisting right, I start strafing right. And likewise, if I want to strafe left, I go the other direction. This is a little weird though, because it's hard for me to keep my feet zeroed at the 50% mark, so if I'm strafing left or right, I tend to strafe up or down, or strafe a little bit forward, or strafe a little bit back, but that's not too bad, because in a dogfighting situation, having that kind of randomness is nice, because you're not making clear precision moves, and it makes you a little bit harder of a target to hit. A little bit more, I'll explain a little bit what I mean by depressing the left and right toe at 50% here. Another way for me to illustrate this is with my feet relaxed, the pedals are leaning all the way back, but I have it set up so that having the right and left toe depressed at about 50%, the game sees that as the 0 point. Tipping forward or tipping back is what actually is the change in axis that controls strafing up or strafing down. Again, with my left toe, tipping forward or tipping back is what controls strafing forward and back. The problem lies is when I'm using the rudder, it's hard for me to keep the left and right toe perfectly centered in the way that I want. Looking at the dead zones, I try to keep my feet right about here, but it kind of jumps around a bit based on how I'm moving, how I'm piloting. Right here, my ship is not strafing at all. Here, I'm strafing or attempting to strafe right. And here, I'm attempting to strafe left. If I want to strafe up, right toe forward is strafing up. Right toe back, strafing down. Left toe forward, strafing up. Left toe back, strafing down. And again, going back here, the dead zones help in kind of keeping unnecessary movement at a minimum. In case you're curious how I got the pedals to work in this way, it's kind of cool how they set up Star Citizen to recognize the different control inputs. Right now, Joystick HOTAS 3 is my pedals. HOTAS 1 is my joystick. HOTAS 2 it recognizes as my throttle.
and HOTAS 3 is for my pedals here. Initially, when I reload my control mappings, the forward, strafing forward, and strafing back, as well as the strafing up and down, are inverted. So for it to work logically in my brain, I have to uninvert those. But as far as key binding goes, if I go over to Joystick HOTAS and go to flight movement, I have it set up right here. Strafe up and down is Y on input 3, which is HOTAS 3. And strafing forward back is X, input 3. That's my left toe, and Y would be my right toe. And then strafing left and right would be the rotation, or Z-axis, which is on my input 3. Again, under controls, HOTAS 1 is a joystick, HOTAS 2 is a throttle, HOTAS 3 is my pedals. So they have it recognizing the input in such a way that instead of just assigning strafe forward or strafe back, it's saying it's kind of looking at it like the way it looks at the throttle. You know, what is the overall degree of motion for this particular axis? And I happen to be able to get my HOTAS and Star Citizen to work in that way, and it was kind of a happy accident. And I really hope it works for you guys if anyone else decides to use Othium's method for strafing. In conclusion, if you could at least make a high-end HOTAS that had a dual-stage trigger, more logical hat placement for the joystick, and had a trackball in a logical neutral position for the thumb, that would definitely be worth a loan $600 to $700 in my opinion for a high-end HOTAS. I would personally be willing to spend $800, but I know that my budget is a little bit more ridiculous than most people's. But to really tie it all together, if you were to make a set of pedals to accompany this HOTAS, where the pedals were by default would spring back to a halfway position, or you can at least adjust them or put a spring in them so that they'd spring back to a halfway position, kind of like how the toggle switches work on the X55, where they can tilt forward and tilt back, but they spring back to center. That would definitely be the definitive strafing control method that most people would be very, very happy to use, and I think it would just be a logical choice. I would spend a ridiculous sum, up to $1,000 for a complete setup just like that. I don't care how it would look, as long as it functioned like that, I'd be more than happy.